Welcome back to Crazy Artist 101. This is Judy, and this time I am back with Photoshop. Now, Photoshop is known for being great for photo editing, and there, of course, is plenty of things you can do for photo editing, but as you can see here, I'm going to use it to make some computer art for really quick and easy to do color fill-ins. So, as you can kind of see here, I've got a picture already down there, and that's actually a sketch that is quickly doodled out. So, you know what? I feel like doing this for you guys today, so I'm just going to quickly color this one in. Now, as you can see here, what I tend to do first is I'm getting the basic colors out, and I'm doing it all based off that sketch. Now, I'll go back to that sketch a lot, especially to figure out where my shadows are that I've already marked off in my sketch. But all I'm doing right now is getting those basic colors out. Now, the biggest thing that really helps you out when it comes to Photoshop and coloring in is number one, layers, and number two, that smudge tool, which is what I'm using right now on that floor. Layers are really good so that if you make a mistake, if you do all this coloring and stuff like that, and you make a mistake and find out you did it on the totally wrong thing, and you wanted to maybe change the opacity, make it more transparent, and you can't do it because you had it all together, if you had it on a separate layer, you could just delete it all without deleting everything you've just done. I know I've done that plenty of times where I've left it all on just one layer and then found out now I've got to find out some way to hide what I just did. A lot easier to just delete a layer than it is to try to redo or try to fix some of your mistakes. So utilize those layers properly. I've got my sketch as one layer, I've got my skin as another, and then I'll have stuff like the shirt color or the skirt color, the background or the floor. I'll have just a ton of layers. Now you can always merge those together when you're done with them if you want to make it nice and clean. I personally like to play around with my layers because I like to hide all my layers and then bring them back up and just see how it kind of builds together. But again, to each their own, but this is again my method of doing things. So right now I am putting down that basic color. I'm using that sketch to help me out and figuring out that basic color. Now I use the pencil tool, which I very rarely do because I don't like the little pixelated lines that it leaves. But for this, because I'm just using the paint bucket to fill in those areas, the pencil tool is the best tool for the job. The brush tool, which is what I usually like to use, has a very sporadic I guess you would say pour, where it's not always opaque, and you can very easily miss a few spots, and if you hit that paint bucket tool, it's just going to cover up the whole area, which is really annoying to do. So what you'll see me doing, as you can see right now, I'm putting down the highlights, I'm putting down the shadows. Now, some artists, because it's always good to have those colors easily accessible, you can either save those color swatches over in your color palette, which is over on the right hand side, or you can actually put it on this like a palette layer, so you can make a whole layer with just the colors you're using. So you can have your base color, your highlight, and your shadow for each one of your colors over on that palette layer, so that you can go back to it if you've made a mistake or if you forgot an area, which that happens fairly often, especially if you're zoomed in a lot. So keep an eye on those colors, because it's a little bit hard once you start blending it in with the smudge tool. The smudge tool is that tool over on the left hand side where it looks like a finger. It literally is all about that smudging technique you could use with graphite to blend out all your different values. That's basically all it is. It's just on a computer. So a lot of the techniques you use in drawing you can use in Photoshop. You just got to know where to look for them. And again, if you guys have any questions on where exactly everything's at, feel free to ask me, and if I need to do a tutorial for you guys for that, I can definitely do that and slow things down. Because I'm really not going to go in too deep on exactly how I did everything. The biggest thing I can tell you is, of course, use those layers, and also utilize all the tools that you have in Photoshop. As you can see here, I'm making a really quick shadow by plain and simply using a magnetic tool. So I play around with the blending layers. I play around with, the magnetic tool to create the shadows. There's a lot of different things you can do with Photoshop. There's so many tools that you can use. If you know what they are, you can utilize them fairly well, and it will lessen the amount of time that it takes for you to make something like this. Okay, so again, this is just a quick little drawing. I'm going to upload this up to my DeviantArt so you guys can see the finished product. If you guys have any questions on anything specific, like where is the smudge tool, how do I create new layers on Photoshop, how do I use the brush tool and change its opacity, if you have any confusion about any of that, please feel free to leave a comment. I would love to get back to you guys on that, and I can of course make another video being more specific about the different tools and what you guys can use with Photoshop. Don't forget, if you do not have Photoshop and if it's way too expensive for you to go get it, there is always GIMP, and GIMP has a lot of the tools that Photoshop offers, but it's free to download. So sometimes those free to download softwares are good to have, especially if you don't have the money for something like Photoshop, because Photoshop can be a little bit expensive. I know I couldn't get it for the longest time. I ended up getting paid for, so I ended up buying me Photoshop as a commission work that I did for them by hand. So that's the way I got my Photoshop. But yeah, so again, GIMP is a good one to go to if you need free software, and if Photoshop's too expensive. But if you got Photoshop and you want to know what tools are what, and what do I mean by when I say opacity, or the smudge tool, or where's the paint bucket at, or where's the background eraser, or something like that, feel free to leave some comments below, and I will of course get back to you on that one. And check out the DeviantArt account if you want to see the full version of this. I'll try to post a link to that in the description. And of course, like us if you enjoyed this video, if it's answered any of your questions, and I'll see you guys later.